Hello, namaste, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to For Us. We are the latest news, and today we're going to talk about week 2 from round 2 of this ICC Men's T20 World Cup. I'm telling you, it's turning out to be an interesting piece of work to cover, to watch, to enjoy, because I don't know what happened, but India got hammered by New Zealand at the start of the week, and I thought, oh, okay, so India's gonna have a terrible time of it. New Zealand played brilliantly against them, right? And India just looked out of confidence, right? They looked like, and a lot of people are saying this, they had a fear of failure, and they just seemed a bit dull. And then, for some strange and apparent reason, on Wednesday, they thought, oh, we're playing Afghanistan. It's a do and die situation. Let's just absolutely obliterate, first off, the Afghanistan bowling. And secondly, when Afghanistan comes out to bat, not let them get anywhere close to their target. What cricket, man, honestly. And then just now, they absolutely hammered Scotland to get the best net run rate in Group 2. I'm telling you, India is looking like India due to the last two performances against Afghanistan and Scotland. Yes, slightly weaker teams, but Afghanistan are weak, but not very weak, because they gave a really good fight to Pakistan in that particular game. Unfortunately, there's no Mujibur Rahman. He's still injured, which is sad. And, Azhar Khan is left. But that team that Afghanistan played was not a bad team from their perspective. But India just hammered them. KL Rahul with this fantastic 60 odd, and then Rohit Sharma with an amazing 74. Changed up the batting order. Rishabh Pant came in at 3, smashed like 20, 24, 25, something like that, a striker of 200. And then Hardik Pandya came on to bat at number 4 and smashed 35 of 13. India's batting looked like India's batting in the past 2 games, even against Scotland. Saw KL Rahul get a 50 off 18, fastest 50 of this particular T20 World Cup. Okay, Rohit Sharma was aggressive. Suryakumar Yadav came in this time around and actually smashed a 6 of his second ball to win them the match. And as I said, get them to the highest net run rate in the group, which means, considering the circumstances we are sitting in at the moment, if Afghanistan beats New Zealand, there is a very high chance that India goes through, obviously after beating Namibia. But for everyone, for most people, it's an assumption that India is going to beat Namibia 100% or 99%. And then if Afghanistan beats New Zealand and if Mujibur Rahman is fit, I think there's a high chance that Afghanistan might just turn the tables and actually defeat New Zealand. Yes, it's going to be a difficult task for them, but it'll be like 3 teams on 6 points, and then India probably move up. And it's a very interesting group, man. I wasn't expecting this in Group 2. I thought, oh, it's going to be easy. But Group 2 is looking like a very interesting crescendo now over the next few days. Very, very excited. I also wanted to mention about the conspiracy theories. Afghanistan were paid off, or there was match fixing, or etc., etc. Let's hold all of that, right? All of those conspiracies we got. Let's grab them and put them on here, okay? Objectively speaking, Afghanistan bowled terribly in that game. Yes, Mohammad Nabi only bowled the first over. You can think of matchups, right-handers, etc., etc. That's why he didn't bowl again. But bad decision. He should have bowled. He had an economy of 7 after this first over, the first over of the game, and just didn't bowl after that. Okay, Kareem Jannat only bowled 1 over, but Rashid Khan actually got pumped for the first time, I think, in this entire T20 World Cup, which was great from an Indian perspective, right? And then the other pace bowlers specifically, yes, Hamid Hassan was good, but they just got absolutely battered by this Indian batting lineup. All right. And they just came in and got smashed for 4 or smashed for 6 or another 6 or another boundary, because the bowling was absolutely horrendous. That's why India scored 210 for 2, because the bowling was bad. And when they came out to bat, right, Afghanistan, India's bowling was really, really tight. Yes, Shami went for runs. Yes, some people might go runs here and there, but it was really tight. They brought in Ravichandran Ashwin back. He bowled so well. He bowled well in this game as well against Scotland. Ravi Jadeja bowled really well. So I'm just trying to say that India's side is good, but over the course of the last 2 games, it tells you that they might just be kicking back into form, which is good for them, but not good for any team who faces them, because they're high on confidence after these 2 wins. So yeah, just thought I'd mention that. So yeah, let's stick to objectivity. Let's stick to what actually happened. Afghanistan weren't good enough against India, and they just batted the way that they usually bat. That's just how they bat. But in terms of the bowling, that came out to be the weak link in that particular game. Now, if we talk about New Zealand has now, apart from the Pakistan game, won their other games so far. The game on Sunday, Afghanistan, New Zealand, will basically decide who goes through into the semi. So that's going to be a really interesting encounter. And New Zealand kind of struggled against Scotland. I think they only won by 15, 16 runs. But Scotland played really well in that game. Kind of restricted them to 172 and then almost got to that score. But obviously, you lose some wickets here and there. And unfortunately, from a Scottish perspective, they just weren't able to finish the game off. But New Zealand, they had a challenge. They genuinely had a challenge. It was great to see Scotland actually fighting back against a team like New Zealand, the caliber of a team like New Zealand. Then thankfully, New Zealand finally got some players back in form. More specifically, Glenn Phillips and Jimmy Neesham smashed a few runs. By a few runs, I mean quite a few runs against Namibia as well. So New Zealand are looking good as well. India's looking good. Afghanistan just a little low on confidence, but we'll see where that gets to. But yeah, Pakistan, obviously, Pakistan has already qualified to the semifinals. They have one game to play against Scotland, which will take place in the next couple of days as well. So yeah, Pakistan's in. We just need to see if Pakistan is group toppers or, they're second at the end of it, But high chance they're probably going to be group toppers. And on the other end, in Group 1, you have England, group toppers, smashing every single team that they have come across. Joss freaking Butler scored a 70-odd against Australia and then scored a magnificent 100, right? He was so good. It's, my words elude me when I think of someone like Joss Butler, right? Because he is so, so talented. And he's actually fulfilling his opening slot role, position, whatever you want to call it, really well. He took his time, 45 balls to get 150 and then like 22 to get the rest of the 50. First century of this tournament, I believe. And the first Englishman actually to score 100 in all three formats. Now, I have to talk about Tamal Mills. He's actually injured, unfortunately, and he is out of the T20 World Cup. There's another injury, but this time it's to Bangladesh. Shakib Al Hasan has also been ruled out of the World Cup, which is really unfortunate because he is probably Bangladesh's best player, no doubt about that. And they're trying to find a way to fit someone else in, but that's like 2 to 3 players they need to bring in to kind of replace someone like Shakib Al Hasan. And by the way, Bangladesh are out of it. They are absolutely gone. They're out of the T20 World Cup. Another team who's out of the T20 World Cup is freaking Sri Lanka. They have been so close in a couple of games. They've had some really good wins. They've been so close, but in the end, they just didn't have that X factor to move up or try and beat a team like England or Australia or South Africa. They weren't able to go that one step higher, which was really unfortunate for them, but they played well. Hasaranga has been a revelation, right? He's been a revelation for a couple of years, but he is now the world number 1 in T20 rankings for bowling. And he calls himself a batter who bowls a bit, all right? And he's really important in the middle order for Sri Lanka as well. You got Asalanka, who's been playing really, really well. It's not often that I say that about a Sri Lankan T20 player right now, but Asalanka is looking so good. Chamera is just bowling bolts, and so is Kumara. But Chamera is the one who's hanging in line. Line and length is pretty damn good. So yeah, man, it's Sri Lanka have looked good, but they've been the only team that has shown promise, but unfortunately haven't been able to continue that progression because Sri Lanka just, I think they're missing something. They're missing a key player in the middle somewhere, okay? And this talks about, oh, you could bring in Dhananjaya De Silva or you could bring in some sort of leggy, But Tiksana, goodness me, he has been a brilliant find of this T20 World Cup as well. He's been great for Sri Lanka, but unfortunately they've been kicked out. Like I said, Bangladesh kicked out as well. Taskin Ahmed, though, bowling absolute peach is this guy. It's good to have, certain players, but Bangladesh look weak as anything. And another team who I expected so much from, West Indies, flopped on the box office. No doubts about that. Absolutely hammered in this T20 World Cup. The only match they won was against Bangladesh, right? The game against Sri Lanka, Nicholas Pooran batted well. Hetmeyer scored 80-odd. It looked like, oh, wow, they might actually win another game. Nope. West Indies still lost. Sri Lanka beat them. And West Indies just not been up to the mark. You got Karen Pollard. You got big names. You got really big names. And they've just not been able to perform. You see them like dominate most of franchise cricket around the world, West Indian players. This is something Carlos Brathwaite said. I heard him, I think it was yesterday. And he said, a lot of these players are so good, but they've been so good for so long that it's reminding him of, 1975, 1979, and 1983 onwards, West Indies in ODI cricket started to go on a slightly downward trajectory. And something similar is happening to the T20 setup. And I love that analogy. I was like, yeah, that makes complete sense. ODIs, West Indies was the first one in the World Cups to win 2 on the trot. And then in T20 World Cups, West Indies was the first team to win 2 World Cups as well. And they adapt quickly, but then they don't evolve. Those were his words. And I was like, yeah, that pretty much makes sense. Gale has been an absolute abomination to the batting lineup. Roston Chase played a couple of games, looked okay, but again, nothing to write home about. I feel really bad that Hayden Walsh Jr., Akil Hussain, and Roston Chase couldn't play together much because that trio of spinners might have actually really helped West Indies. And that injury, obviously, to Oben McCoy was quite unfortunate. In terms of the rest, like Lendl Simmons, Chris Gale, I'm sorry, these two kind of have to go now. Evan Lewis had a really good innings, but just one innings. Hetmeyer had a really good innings. Pooran had a couple. But that's it. There's an interesting fact. I think Jared Kimber shared this. None of the West Indian batsmen have scored above 100 runs in this T20 World Cup. Can you imagine? Yes, they've got one game against Australia left, but can you imagine? That is atrocious. Shocking as anything, right? So yeah, West Indies are in poor touch. And then I really want to mention South Africa and Australia together because they're similar kind of South Africa's bowling is probably one of the best bowling setups in this entire World Cup. No doubts about that. But with Australia, Zampa picking up a 5 against Bangladesh, he's kicking back into it, things as well. So, both of these sides bowling looks the more promising of the two. And then they're batting. Yes, Finch scored some runs. Warner scored some runs as well. You've got Miller. You've got Van der Dusen. Bavuma comes in as an anchor, kind of scores a few runs. And it's just not been as consistent as teams like England and, I can't believe, Pakistan in this T20 World Cup. So South Africa and Australia sit in a similar position. But because of that large win that Australia got over Bangladesh by absolutely dumping them onto the ground, right, digging a hole, burying them in there, has caused Australia to move up in the rankings due to the net run rate, the superior run rate that they have now. So South Africa have to beat England to have any shot of progressing forward and beat them kind of convincingly, not like super convincingly, but kind of convincingly to get their net run rate up because England's qualified, Pakistan's qualified. There's basically 5 teams fighting for 2 positions. South Africa and Australia in Group 1 and India, New Zealand, Afghanistan in Group 2. It's going to be a banger, man, honestly. In terms of the player of this week for me, I genuinely have to give a shout out to Wanindu Hasaranga. The way he's batted in certain innings, the amount of wickets this guy comes in and just takes. If he doesn't take wickets, he's economical. He's pretty good in the field as well. One of the best fielders that Sri Lanka has as of this moment. He's been great. I've been super impressed with him. Unfortunately, I can't name any Pakistanis because obviously Pakistan only played one game and that was against Namibia. I know people are going to say this. Yes, Jos Buttler was in consideration. Yes, he played brilliantly. Jos Buttler is the surprise package of this week for me because I did not expect much from Jos Buttler after not having the best of starts. Yes, he was not out in that game against West Indies. He didn't really bat much in the second, but after the Australia game and then the game against Sri Lanka, it just tells me that, oh, Dalali, this guy, just the boss, as Zora says from the Cricket Analyst, right? Jos Buttler is fantastic, right? So for me, he's the surprise of the week, honestly. It's been a really interesting week. Hopefully, we'll have a few more days and then we'll get the final 4 and the semis start on Wednesday. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Do let me know your thoughts about week 2 or this entire T20 World Cup. Let me know your thoughts on the player of the week and the surprise player of the week. And I would love to read them. Love to have that interaction. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care.